Hey, welcome back to Mysterious Goings On. It's me, Alex. I am really excited to be presenting to you a much belated, delayed reappearance of a beloved guest and friend on the show. It's been since 2016. That was when we had Michelle Stinson Ross, author, digital marketing guru, buddy of mine, and I am so thrilled to welcome Michelle back. Hey, Michelle, welcome back to Mysterious Goings On.
Thank you, Alex. Way not to downplay it at all.
Well, hey, I mean, seriously, I feel bad because I kept thinking, because I talk to you quite often, and we're buddies on social in particular. We've seen each other in real life,
we actually have been face to face with one another. It's quite amazing.
It's crazy, but I haven't had you back on. So I think it just got into my head like, oh, I've had Michelle on lots of times because I talk to her all the time. So, but no, I have not. So my bad. And thanks for making some time in your schedule to get back with me. I kind of covered the bases there. Did I cover those bases correctly on the main focuses of what you're up to? Besides being a mom and a buddy, you're a digital marketing guru. You travel the world preaching the gospel of digital marketing, don't you?
Yeah, to a degree. I have actually flown over the Atlantic to teach marketing in London. So yeah, sure, I could say I've traveled the world doing it.
Internationally recognized speaker, which is what it is. I went and did a seminar in Curacao off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, you and I both. And I mentioned that in my bio, and somebody was like, oh, give me a break. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Did Curacao become a state or something while I was gone? Therefore, it's international. So kudos to you. But you also, you're around the entire country. How often are you on the road out of the 52 weeks a year?
I usually will do 1 to 2 conferences a month. This summer, we took a little break from the conferences, so I probably did a total of 8 conferences this year, and I have gone from just doing 30-minute conference sessions to doing full-day workshops now.
Oh, wow. Because I've heard you speak. You came to Kansas City, and I heard you were so good and engaging and fun. And then what was even more fun is you got me into the VIP room with you and some of the other speakers, and we had a nice day. Remember that? It was a lovely day. And we went to dinner. That's right. We went to dinner the whole bit. It was a lovely day. But no, is it twice? No, you came back again, though.
I was back again this spring, and you were doing dental things, I think.
That's when I had to have my jaw bone graft to my jaw.
You and your cringy medical stuff, dude.
I know. I realized that the other day. Because, of course, listening to the show, I have no issue talking about all of my falling apart. But then I thought, yeah, I'm becoming the old man whose every illness and rash becomes fodder for his show. But whatever. And what's ironic is I was talking to Jason McIntyre recently, and I don't know if I said this to him or thought it, but I was like, and here I am, the guy who really professes to dislike body horror type fiction, and I'm the one presenting real life body horror, bone graft, kidney stone, eyesight going, arthritis. Anyway, okay, enough about me. Michelle, you're doing something interesting here. Now, I should say, you've got one book in the can that it's such fun. It's a delight. It is Revenge of the Siren Song, and it is been reviewed by yours truly. I read it, and it is a delight, and it has a couple of things that I think are really fun. Besides the fact protagonist is a woman, it's not
highly unusual, right?
Yes, but what I love about it, here's where I go to, because I don't like, for the sake of that phrase, you back it historically. She basically existed. I mean, maybe not her, the actual character, but there were women like her, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the name Grace O'Malley actually comes from an Elizabethan era Irish pirate that actually was one of the few people from Ireland to actually get an audience with Queen Elizabeth. So anybody that is into Irish folklore should know who Granuaile, Grace O'Malley, was. So that's where the name comes from. It is my nod to another era of piracy. Depends on who you talk to as to whether or not she was really a pirate. Obviously, the English thought she was. She didn't quite think so. But also that character is a bit of an homage to real life historical characters like Anne Bonny and Mary Read. And also it's kind of me saying, well, I'm a bit disappointed with how Elizabeth Swann turned out. I because
Yeah.
we get three movies through, and the two characters that have the most change in their story arc, their character development, is actually Elizabeth Swann and Will.
And Will. Yeah.
And yet we keep following Captain Jack Sparrow around. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. We just skipped over some of the most interesting characters in the entire franchise. So to a degree, that first book was kind of me pondering, what if Elizabeth Swann, the Pirate King, continued to sail the ocean blue for a while?
And it's fun. And the siren song, if can I give it away? That's the
Oh,
ship.
please.
That's the ship.
Yes.
So you published that in 2016 or 2015?
So the first edition of the book, the one that you read and reviewed so kindly, that I edited and formatted, I did all of that myself. I didn't have any help. That edition of the book was published in 2010.
Oh, that was
So,
2010. Wow.
yeah. So the first edition was 2010. In 2016, I did a second edition of the book with
Okay.
a new cover, a professional
Really good.
edit.
I love that cover.
I love the cover. I am really grateful to Robert for doing a cleanup edit because it reads even better now. You were sweet and kind to review it when it was my edit of the work. I feel like it's an even better work now, and that's
Yeah,
because
we've both been there. We both did that with our first books, and then I went back and did a second edition with a. Well, I had a line editor, but I think at the time I really thought the line editor was going to do more than just kind of look for typos, and she missed a few of those. So yeah, I just had a professional redo, and I'm thrilled that at least for this, we've shared an editor. Robert's really good. Well, so that book's out, and you've always had designs on making it more than one book. I don't know if when we first got to know each other it was going to be a lengthy series, but I knew for a fact you wanted to see more of these characters, and I was thinking I would like to see more. I want to know more because it's.
Oh, I've had everybody that's read Revenge of the Siren Song. They're like, "Are you going to write more?
Yeah.
We want more."
They should. You should. I always thought at the very least, and I'm like big on threes. And this, of course, I thought I was going to stop at 3, which I couldn't. But I hope at least you'll do 3. But I don't think that's your plan. I think you plan to do more.
I am looking at a total of 10.
Woo.
Okay, I will be reasonable and admit that, oh my God, it has taken me forever to pick up and start writing again. Yes, I will admit that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been almost 10 years since I put out another long form work of fiction. Oh my gosh, you have far outpaced me with the number of books you've created in the same amount of time. But I have been making plans for those entire 10 years. And I have to admit, looking back on my life now, that 10 years has actually been 10 years more life experience, 10 years more of learning how to be a good human being, to be compassionate with my fellow man. And I feel like to a degree, it's really improved my ability to tell a good, compelling story. So, okay, you guys, you've made a 10-year investment in me. It's time for it to pay off, right?
I like that. And knowing a lot of what you've lived through the past 10 years, I cannot imagine your work not having, and I don't mean this like it lacked maturity before it didn't, but the new maturity that's going to come with this, I'm so looking forward to. And again, that's not like me saying it was immature previously, but it's 10 years of life. I mean, it's like if you go to my first book and you go to my last, there's a big difference in the way it's written and the way it sounds, and the character is very different. So I'm so looking forward to Grace. Now, will Grace be 10 years older in the next one, or no?
So I'm leaving that up to the audience to decide. No, actually, she's not, because I pick up right where I left off in Revenge of the Siren Song. So at the end of the Siren Song, without any spoilers, I promise you guys, no spoilers here, Grace and the crew of the Siren Song are crossing from the Atlantic into the Pacific. They're going around the southern tip of South America.
Right.
So the second book, the title, which is Treasure of the Sunstone, picks up with them now sailing north along the coast of South America toward the Juan Fernandez Islands.
The Juan Fernandez. I don't even know. I don't think I've ever heard of them, honestly.
Yes, you would have. If have you ever heard of Robinson Crusoe?
Is that where he was marooned?
So, Robinson Crusoe is based on the real life story of a sailor called Alexander Selkirk.
That's right.
Selkirk was marooned on the Juan Fernandez Islands for, I want to say, 3 to 4 years, something like that. And he actually has a direct connection to a lot of the research that went into the story of Treasure of the Sunstone.
Oh.
Because he was sailing with a privateer crew, and the captain of the ship that he was on was not maintaining the ship well. Selkirk was incredibly worried that the ship was rotting out from under their feet. So he actually chose to disembark and not get back on. And that's how he wound up marooned. He then is rescued by another privateer group that was sailing to capture the Manila Galleon that year. A lot of this information is kind of the underpinnings of what's going on in Treasure of the Sunstone. Captain Grace O'Malley has met a few other privateers in the Pacific, and yeah, they've kind of set their sights on a major Spanish port in South America, as well as maybe the Manila Galleon.
Okay. See, I love that. I love that. And I try to do that too, is to add some reels. The verisimilitude, you've got to, I love to add that. And I had somebody tell me they loved that they could always kind of do a little globe trotting or learn about something. And so I love that about your books. And that's another thing too, is just, and folks, if you're kind of looking for a bodice ripper romance thing, that's really, that's not what this is. There's romance and there's saucy. I call it saucy. It's a saucy story, but to me, it's action, adventure, and it's got tons of historical accuracy. I mean, we talked about this years ago. I still remember that from our last conversation, is like, you really helped me research some stuff in the Keys and the wreck of the Atocha and some other things that I implemented. You're just great at that. You really are. So let's talk really quickly about what you're doing now to move this forward. You've decided to do something that a lot of authors, I think, are trying. And let's tell us a little bit about it. What you up to?
Well, I have just launched a Patreon account and have connected it to my website. And the purpose being is, again, not really something that's particularly new among writers. So in the write-up I did for Patreon, I mentioned that I'm kind of hearkening back to Charles Dickens, Alexander Dumas, Arthur Conan Doyle. Oh my God, do I wish that I could write as well as these people. But one of the things that they did was they serialized the production of their work. So Doyle in particular is very famous for having produced his stories and chapters for the Strand and then compiling them later as a full-length book. Mm-hmm. So I had been thinking for a really long time, this is something that I would like to do and produce the chapters a chapter at a time. I kind of did that way back in the day on MySpace. We could talk about that later.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I wanted to also kind of give myself a little bit more freedom mentally, emotionally, financially. And so I set it up as a patron-only option. So in order to read the new chapters as they come out, you have to be a subscriber on Patreon. Mm-hmm. Now, for anybody that all they're interested in is the new chapters of Treasure of the Sunstone, it's $2 a month commitment to be able to read the chapters as they come out. And plus, the way I've set it up, you also have access to all of the chapters that came before. So just no matter when you choose to start as a patron, you can read all of the chapters up to that point, and then I want to pace it 2 chapters a month. So I'm hoping every couple of weeks I have a new chapter rolled out for you to read on my website, and I'll put links in the Patreon account and all that kind of stuff. But if you go to patreon.com, and I think we're going to have the link in the show notes. Yes?
Absolutely, we are.
Okay.
It'll be on the MGO pod page in particular. It'll also be attached to the actual audio. But if you ever can't find it on your phone when you're listening, because sometimes it gets clipped, just go to MGO pod and you'll find it.
Cool. So, having gotten that out of the way, if you will go to my page on Patreon, it explains all of the different levels, from whether or not you just want a hammock on the beach to read, or whether you want to sign up as a senior member of the crew and get all of the goodies. There are tons of options there.
I've thought about this. I did something kind of like this. I funded a book on Kickstarter years ago, and it did fine. We got 106% of what we asked for. And I looked at Patreon. Actually, I looked at it more for podcasting. I decided I wasn't going to do it, and for a couple of reasons. But I think I'm answering my own question, or you've answered my question already. But my question to you is going to be, well, what do you say to people who are just like, I'll just buy the book? But you already answered it, right? You're saying, look, here, if you want to read the book in progress, like the book will be out in a year or whatever, right? It won't be out, or whatever, how long it takes, but you get to be part of the thing every month. Is that right? It's monthly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that kind of
well, and there are levels where you get input into it as well. So because these are rolling out a couple of weeks at a time, obviously as a patron, you can comment on anything. You can say, hey, have you ever thought of this? Or so the patrons actually get input into the process of writing the book. They get more investment in it at certain levels of patronage. You also can have an opportunity to help me name a pirate, which, oh my gosh, I need help naming people all the time. This
Tell me about
crew and all of the people that have become a part of this world, it's just like, oh God, I need another name.
Yeah.
It's getting crazy. And you have an opportunity at certain levels to help name the ships that are in the series. So there's tons of stuff. I will probably offer other things as I start to get this really rolling and have other things. Who knows? I still have plans to do an audiobook version of Revenge of the Siren Song. So there are levels where you can get advanced chapters. As I get them edited and they're actually ready to listen to, you can listen to those a chapter at a time. And eventually I'll get it all put together and put on Audible. There's lots of stuff going on. This isn't just a small little one-time thing either. This is my opportunity to say I'm really serious about the writing, and at some point I would like very much to shift my career to be more about writing and storytelling than it is currently about marketing, because honestly, I feel like in 10 years' time, I've gotten to the point where I feel like I'm just selling everybody else's stuff, and I want an opportunity to actually share and sell my own things, the things that I'm most passionate about. And I felt like this was a good step. Plus, one of the things I have always had on my heart, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, is I want to provide a lot of the information about how to go about building an audience in digital, how to make a success of creating, whether it's fiction, short stories, podcasts, video production, music. I have tons of connections with people in all sorts of creative genres, artists, painters. It's always been on my heart to provide some training from my digital marketing background with, okay, how do you set up a Facebook page? Yeah. How do you do a Facebook ad campaign? How do I tie all of that stuff back to my website? Do I need a website? How do I build a website? All of those sorts of things. This is stuff that I do every day in my career. Yeah. And I know that it's valuable to people who maybe aren't the same level of digital native than I am. So that was really where my mind went. I thought I would love to do this as kind of an on-demand video training. And I had looked at all kinds of ways to set that up on my WordPress website. And just the level of all of the things that I need to add in order to make that something that they actually pay for, right? Instead of just freebie watching it on YouTube or whatever.
Right.
And that kind of held me back from doing it because it was just so difficult to put all of this stuff in place. Where do I host it? How do I collect the money? How do I put it behind the paywall? All of it, and a lot of it was on the back end of WordPress. How do I actually set this up to
Yeah.
functionally work for both me and people that might be interested in taking the courses? And so I just sat on the idea for a long time. Well, it was when I discovered that Patreon has a WordPress plugin that very easily enables me to turn different sections of I don't even have to turn the entire website into a membership site. I can do it in the case of the chapters that I'm writing, I can do it blog post by blog post. So only the blog posts that are chapters are the ones that are set up as you have to have at a certain Patreon level to see it. Everything else free and viewable just like any other WordPress website out there online. I thought this is it. This is the answer that I've been looking for. And that's really why I chose Patreon, was just how super easy it was to create the Patreon account, set up the levels, and then implement it on my website.
Okay. So, that makes more sense to me
Hmm.
because, you and I both, we don't have huge audiences. We have the people we have are loyal. I mean, our
Yes.
book audiences. I don't mean your digital marketing audience because I know you're international. You're live and nationwide. But let's be honest, we don't sell thousands and thousands of books. So that's one reason I talk myself out of Patreon. It's like, I don't think I can get enough people to make it worth it. And my problem was that, and I just thought, geez, so I don't know. So that's why I kind of went the podcast route, where it's just I can communicate this way. My downloads are okay. I'm not a superstar in the podcast world, but I do think it helps me stay connected with my audience. But it also does something else for me that I think this Patreon is going to do for you. It keeps me honest. People expect content out of you, and if you can't get it, you can't write a book in a day. I mean, I can't write a book in a month. I can't do that. I'm just not wired that way. It's the way it is. But what I can do is check in with my listeners a couple of times a month at the least. So that's kind of what I see you doing here. And what I love hearing about this, by the way, the most, is that you are this maven when it comes to the digital and you offering that. But I love the idea that, because I have the same problem, though, you do sometimes. I'm not quite the same as you in what you do and what I do, but we give a lot of it away. It's a very big inbound marketing concept of like, if you offer this free content, you'll pull clients in, and you will to a degree, and you'll build a
Hmm.
name. But there's a point where you're like, I can't give the cow away here, folks. I can give you some milk, and I'm happy to give
Hmm.
you a pitcher of milk every now and then, but I can't
Right.
give the cow away. So what I love what you're doing here, and I know you haven't got all that set up 100% yet, or do you? The training stuff.
All right, the training stuff is not yet set up. That's kind of my stretch goal. I
Hmm.
really right now want to make sure that I focus on being accountable to getting those chapters done,
Right.
because honestly, when I started 2019, I thought I can have this manuscript, at least the draft,
Hmm.
ready for an editor by June. And my life with kids and everything else
Sure.
just torpedoed that plan.
Yeah.
So I just finished and I was purposeful in this because I knew we were going to be doing this recording today. I finished chapter 8 last
Hey.
night
All
just
right.
so that I could sit here and say, "Hey, I finished a chapter."
That's huge.
It
Congrats.
is huge. It is huge. And I feel good about it now. I can kind of see my way forward, and I'm sitting looking at the fact that I've now set up this accountability,
Right.
and I
Right.
actually have some people subscribed on Patreon and that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, this weekend I need to try and see how far I can get with chapter 9
Yeah.
and kind of keep going. So that's really what, for me, what Patreon is about, is having enough people invested in the production of this book that I feel accountable, that
Wow.
I can give myself a reason to say, okay, I need to set the life drama aside for a minute and write.
You've got a two-pronged marketing approach here. You're getting readers, but you're also going after other writers, and you're
Hmm.
building a community. And that's how we've formed our basis of our friendship. Is we both
Sure.
write and we both do that, and we're constantly, whether it's either we're directly asking, how did you do that, or we're looking at. I'm looking at you and I'm going, Michelle, that's a great idea. I should do that, and hopefully once in a while you think the same thing of me, and we go. So we do
Oh,
that.
I'm totally envious of the podcast, by the
Oh
way.
well, well, don't be too envious, but you could do a great one. But it's just It's so funny about this podcast. It was a lark for me. I just one day said, because I had podcasts since 2006 and different shows, and I was just kind of bored with a couple of things I was doing, and I thought, well, what the hell? So I remember just one day I created the thing, and it really took off. I got New and Noteworthy by Apple when I released it, and I just thought, oh shit, now I've got to actually be accountable and deliver, you know? That was, I don't know, that must have been an accident. But anyway, it's a stretch goal to get the training in there. I understand that. And I don't want to pin you down too much, but do you think that'll be starting to roll out in the next 6 months or so, or?
I could easily see it rolling out in the next 6 months. Right now, I just kind of want to get through 2019. I want these last few weeks to just be over with, and then I can kind of feel like, okay, I've stabilized some things, and now let's see where we want to go to next. So I will say, I have been researching it, and I finally decided that this time around I want to set up a Vimeo account because I have a bit more control over the content if I host it on Vimeo than I do if I host it on YouTube. That doesn't mean I'm getting rid of my YouTube account. I will probably continue to use the YouTube to promote what I'm doing. You'll probably see clips and excerpts of the training and that kind of stuff. But for the actual training itself, I've made the choice to put that on Vimeo and then use Vimeo as my embed to put the video, any other written materials, links, things like that on my website, and then put it behind the Patreon paywall.
Gotcha. Have you any other goals with Patreon? And this is a lot right here, but beyond serializing your work and that, is there anything else that Patreon offers?
The serializing of the work, the production of the audiobook for Revenge of the Siren Song.
Right.
Obviously, if this goes well, then I will be doing audiobooks of the rest of it. So a lot of this is like, as I get one thing done, something else will happen and that kind of stuff. So I have always viewed the content creation, the storytelling as multimedia. So if I do it as a book, I want to be able to do it as an audiobook. I want to be able to, who knows, maybe do it as a graphic novel at some point.
Oh, that'd be great.
All kinds of stuff. I actually, with the help of a friend of mine who is a director and editor in film, he's encouraged me to give screenwriting a shot.
Why not?
So,
yeah,
why not? Revenge of the Siren Song is done, right? Why not try and adapt it to a screenplay? So yeah, if you follow me on like Instagram or Twitter or whatever, you probably saw a few hashtags screenwriting summer. I started what, I kid you not, what they call the BARF, the BARF version of the screenplay, where I just kind of get it all out on the page.
Right.
Let's see, how far did I get with that? Got through Act 1 of the screenplay before I had to kind of shut down and deal with family matters and some other stuff. So I'm one act into the screenplay. I have all of the audio recorded, but it's going to require quite a bit of editing and cleanup. I have to Audible. If I do it myself, there are certain restrictions as far as like noise floor and decibel levels and stuff like that. So I do have some technical audio editing to do before I can start releasing chapters of Revenge of the Siren Song. But I feel like that's kind of the next most pertinent thing is let's get Treasure of the Sunstone written, and then as I can give myself more breathing room and space, I'll start in on the editing of the audiobook, and then at some point I can come back to the screenplay and maybe do a podcast and whatever else my crazy brain decides to do.
I like that. I did using ACX. I did the first book in my series as an audiobook.
I'm all signed up for ACX. I'm doing the same thing.
Good, yeah. And I keep thinking I'm going to just put the rest up there and see if anybody wants to go on a split with me and just do it. It's work though, because you have to go through when they turn in their audio. You have to go listen to it and make sure it's right and give them feedback. And finding that right person to read the book is important too. So, but it's worth doing. So you're inspiring me to look in that. Do that again.
I kind of went the same route I went when I first wrote my book, in that I'm just going to try and do it all. So Revenge of the Siren Song is going to be an author-read audiobook.
Right.
So we'll see how it turns out.
Well, this is exciting, and as I said, mgopod.com will have all of the links, and there's a lot of links to a lot of stuff to follow Michelle at. But I wanted to
Oh,
ask you a
I
couple of things.
really appreciate that.
This has been the year on the show, basically, of creativity discussions, and I don't want to have to. Sorry, I have to do this in a kind of a quick rapid fire deal here. But you work in a creative industry. Digital marketing is creative. Okay, it's strategic, but it's creative. What is the number one thing though that draws your heart and draws your passion towards fiction and books and what you're doing?
Honestly, what's drawn my heart most recently has been my own children. So my kids are 22, 20, and 18.
That freaks me out. You're too young for those kids.
And I've watched them grow up in a world that is vastly different than the world that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's made me very much aware of the value of storytellers and artists to culture, that artists are really the change agents of culture. They are usually the first people that can articulate something new and help the rest of the general public see things in a different way. And
Right.
that's a big thing with what's driving me to continue to create and right now is that my voice, however small or large it may be, that I could actually have an impact in making this world a little bit better for my kids.
I love that. And, I was thinking this yesterday that there's so much going on politically and socially. There's so much upheaval and unrest. And it's easy to think that it's all crap, that the whole world's just going to turn into a cinder tomorrow. And I get into that mode and I get very down. And then I see something on TV and it's stupid or something. And I think, we have so much going on. Why are these people doing this? And then I realize it's just like what you said, though. People need a refuge from negativity and horror and sadness, and they also need that campfire. It's that it's that digital campfire now, right? But we all need
Sure.
that campfire with stories, and that brings us together. I mean, when we were kids, I'm older than you, but when we were kids, right? Everybody and their dog watched the finale of MASH, and everybody the next day is talking about it, right? Okay, we don't have that so much anymore. It's a little splintered, but the good news is we have more campfires to suit different needs and different
Certainly.
interests. And
Certainly.
your campfire here, I don't know how you keep it lit on the high seas, but you do, and it's really nice.
Well, and I'll tell you that a lot of the historic research has made me think long and hard about things in the culture that we're dealing with now. So the golden age of piracy was 1700 to about 1720, the absolute height of colonization in the New World. A lot of the research has me running into the Spanish Inquisition and how much religious intolerance there was in the Catholic Church at the time. Obviously, North American slavery and the triangle slave trade. This is something that I historically run into. And I have the opportunity as an author of fiction to say, what if some of these things were slightly different? What if, there was a slave rebellion early in the, 1700s or even late in the 1600s, like in the 1690s. So there was definitely a period, especially in the Caribbean, that sugar plantation owners were extremely worried that the slave population would revolt and just burn the whole thing down.
Right.
What if that actually happened and slavery in North America ended much earlier, like centuries earlier than it actually did? How fascinating is that, right?
Oh, yeah.
As far as Me Too and the women's place in culture and society, I look at pirates like Anne Bonny and I think, what if pirate culture that was somewhat, I'll say somewhat, more inclusive actually got a foothold in North America? What if a lot of the things that held women back culturally for centuries kind of started going away much earlier in our history? How would that impact today? What would our world be like, in the Victorian era if some of that stuff had happened in the colonial era? So that also fascinates me and inspires me.
Now, people may not understand this, but the which they kind of lampoon a little bit in the Pirates of the Caribbean series. But the code was pretty much, I mean, the equality of the sexes on a pirate ship, right? I mean, I'm not saying every ship, but in general, the code held, right?
Yes, it did. So it didn't matter whether you were black or white or male or female or, if I'll be absolutely honest, gay, because
Right.
yeah, there was that going on. It didn't matter. What the code basically, what it stipulated was how many shares you got based on your place in the crew, what kind of compensation you got if you were injured, if you lost a leg, lost an arm, lost an eye. There were several things that, yeah, pirates had health insurance. Fancy that.
Isn't that crazy?
Also, bonuses. So if you were the first to breach a wall or throw a grenade, or there were things like that, so you could get bonuses, and that was strictly based on performance. There was no regard to which person did what. Also, on a pirate ship, everything, for the most part, was up to a full vote of the ship.
Yeah.
So pirate captains, they had to continue to produce, or they would get voted off the island or voted off the boat.
It's very democratic.
They would absolutely lose command if they did not continue to satisfy the crew with their leadership.
You know, so it's what you're saying. What if those things had changed? What if what you're doing and what you're wanting to do, and I think you're hinting at with your stories, if you think, well, that's silly or whatever, it's not, because just think, we just celebrated 100 years of women having the right to vote.
Right.
And arguably the greatest democracy the world has ever known. So this idea, you know, if you heard her thought and go, oh, come on. Well, no, think about it. If there had been more influence, if this culture, cutthroat as it was, if this culture, though, had a little more influence on the general culture, and as well as if there had been an opportunity for slave revolts, I mean, I'm probably conflating this. Port Royal, that wasn't a slave revolt, right? What was that?
No, Port Royal. Oh, I'm glad you brought this up, because it actually is, it plays into Treasure of the Sunstone. Port Royal was destroyed by an earthquake in 1692.
It was an earthquake. It wasn't humans
Yes.
who. Okay.
Well, it wasn't humans really, but who knows what I may write before it's all said and done.
See, this is fascinating because you're historically accurate in so many ways, but you're also going to have some fun with this, and I can't wait to see it go. I'm going to have to get you back, and it won't be 4 years. I swear to God, it won't be. Michelle, you're always such a treat. Last words out. Any last comments for everybody at home listening?
Keep telling your own stories. Share your truth.
That's wonderful. Folks, you're not going to find a more generous person than Michelle either. You know, of course she's got to make a living, but if you're a writer in particular, and if you're struggling a little bit, find her. Seek her out. She'll give you some advice. She'll do what she can to help you. I'd say shirt off her back, but that might sound a little offensive to me saying that. But you know what?
That could be scandalous.
Oh my, it's saucy is what that is. But yeah, that's a little joke of ours. But if you read my review, it's saucy. But I got to reread Revenge. I'm going to do that and get involved here. And I want to start reading these chapters too. I want to be part of this too. So,
thank you.
Michelle, you're a delight. And all the links are going to be in the show notes. And we hope to have you back very soon. And I'm telling you, I'm going to make a little deal with you. I want to know, maybe in 6 months or so, I want you to come back. And you might have to kick me in the rear and say, remember, you made a deal. I want you to come back on and tell us how it's going. If Patreon's just exceeding your wildest dreams, you want to hear it, or if it's moving slowly, we want to hear it. Because I think other creative folks, not just writers, other creative folks are going to want to know if this is something they should look into.